Good evening. I call to order the December 7th, 2020 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. I am going to ask Mr. Lindy, would you mind leading us in the pledge tonight?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the flag, the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty, justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Present.
Ms. Bolton.
Present.
Mrs. Bowers.
Here.
Mr. Lindy.
Here.
Mr. Messer.
Present.
Mr. Morosky.
Here.
President Jones.
Here. Members of the public who wish to speak during hearing the public must request to do so during the first 10 minutes after the start of the meeting. To speak, you will need to send a request by clicking the chat button, submit your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, and your contact information if you want a direct response to any questions you might have. In keeping with the board's standard practice for hearing the public, you must click the camera icon when you are recognized to speak. Individuals who request to be heard after the first 10 minutes of the meeting will not be recognized to speak during the meeting. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting November 23rd, 2020 and the business meeting November 23rd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second? I see a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Superintendent Mitchell, please introduce our first presentation, and we're going to invite Ms. Russell to click on her camera icon.
Yes, thank you. And so for this presentation, I am going to defer to my colleague, the treasurer, and ask, since this is dealing with the financial matter, to introduce the presentation, please.
Thank you, Laura. So let me introduce Stacy Russell. She's from the interim director of the Muskegon County Library System. She's here to present the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement. So I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Russell.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be joining you all today on behalf of the Government Finance Officers Association to present the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the Cincinnati Public Schools. The Certificate of Achievement program has been in operation since 1946. The purpose of the program is to encourage and assist governments to prepare financial reports of the highest quality for the benefits of the citizens and other parties with a vital interest in a government's finances. During the half century the program has operated, it has gained widespread recognition as a premier indicator of excellence in government financial accounting. To earn their Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, the Cincinnati Public Schools had to substantially conform to the program's demanding criteria, which go well beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles. Program participants must submit copies of their comprehensive annual financial report to the Certificate of Achievement program for an in-depth review and evaluation by 2 members selected from an impartial panel of government finance officers, independent CPAs, educators, and others with specialized expertise and experience in governmental accounting and financial reporting. Only those reports that are judged by all reviewers who have substantially met the program's criteria are awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is not the first time that Cincinnati Public Schools have received the honor. Rather, today's presentation marks the 15th consecutive year that Cincinnati Public Schools have received the Certificate of Achievement. Such a record reflects the professionalism and commitment of numerous individuals as well as many hours of hard work. It also reflects a high degree of dedication and leadership on the part of Ms. Wagner and her staff. The Government Finance Officers Association hopes that this award presented to the Cincinnati Public Schools will serve as an example and encourage others to strive for the same high standards in their own financial reporting. Therefore, it's my privilege on behalf of the Government Finance Officers Association to present to the Cincinnati Public Schools the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. We're going to ask board members to, if you have questions or if you want to make comments, this is the time. Board members? Ms. Bowers?
Yes, I just have a wonderful comment. Congratulations, Treasurer Wagner, to all those who participated in being able to receive this award. This is wonderful. Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that we're trailblazers again, 15 years in a row, huh? Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's truly a departmental effort, so it's not just Jen Wagner, but the whole department.
Thank you. Ms. Bates?
Yes, and I certainly hope we're sending out a press release regarding this award, because this deserves, community kudos, not just board member kudos. This community needs to how well our staff is taking care of the taxpayer dollar.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. I think we all agree with that. Mr. Morosky?
Yeah, I want to send my heartfelt kudos as well. And to kind of piggyback off Ms. Bates, if I may, all one has to do is open up any news outlet or their phone or social media and just read about corruption right now. That's it. That's all anyone wants to talk about. And there's a glowing example here under Treasurer Wagner's leadership and her team. And also, dare I say, my 6 colleagues who have been great stewards of the public dollar. I've only been on this board 3 years, but there have been a lot of enormous public-facing projects in 3 years. And I think this really speaks to that's right. Give him a clap, James. I wish I could say I planned that. So kudos, Treasurer Wagner, Superintendent, and to my colleagues. I'm proud to do this work with y'all.
Thank you. Ms. Bolton?
Yes, congratulations to Jen and the whole treasurer team and everybody that participates on staff to help us through to get these sorts of awards day in, day out. It's great. 15 years in a row is phenomenal. I would also say we always have to Ms. Bates's point, we always have to remind ourselves that in our district, only about 20% of the people in this district have a direct connection with the district regarding attending our schools or teaching in our schools. So there's another 75 or 80% of the people who pay for the school district to function. And they may or may not be directly related, but this proves to them that our folks are doing a great job and being, there's about 5 things school boards are supposed to do and districts are supposed to do, and one of them is being great, how shall we say it, stewards of the public dollar. So congratulations, Jen. Keep us in line and keep us going and keep us solvent.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Mr. Messer?
Yes, I guess I should add my comments too, since we're kind of going around the horn. But, I think Jen plays such a critical job, not only in keeping our district financially sound, but helping to make sure our community understands our funding and how people can be engaged. And we are only as good as the next levy that gets passed to be able to continue to grow and expand and provide the services that CPS does. And it's this financial security and stability and trust, going back to what Mike mentioned, that will keep us getting the support that we've gotten from our community. I think this probably is the most important factor, that if we lost this, I think we would really face challenges when we go back to the voters for levies. And thanks to Jen for keeping us on such strong financial foundation. So thank you, Jen and entire team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, well, to close this part out, I'll just close with just one word. Congratulations. Very proud, very proud. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Wagner. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Russell, for coming.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Russell. All righty, so we're gonna move on to the next presentation. Superintendent Mitchell.
Yes. So this evening, we're going to have Dr. Amin, who is an epidemiologist with the Cincinnati Health Department, present the health data for our community. And before we begin the presentation, as they are loading the PowerPoint, I would like to add some context to this presentation. So for several months now, at each board meeting, we've been providing an update either by Cincinnati Public Schools or the Health Department and Children's Hospital about the data for our community. We have done this because this data is important to guide the decisions that we're making. It's also one of the guiding principles that the board decided upon in June to make decisions as it relates to the pandemic for this year. So Dr. Amin is going to provide an update as it relates to the community health data for the city of Cincinnati and also for Hamilton County. And this data matters to us because it does have an impact on our school district. And I know that as we look at the data and as decisions have been made, this has caused an incredible hardship on everyone. It's hard that our school buildings are not filled with children. It's hard for our parents, it's hard for our staff, and hard for our community. And just understand that it is very difficult. So tonight, the first part of this presentation is to inform the board and the public about the health data. And then that information can be used to make decisions about the district. The second part of this is to motivate us to action, to put things in place to be able to reduce the number of cases that we're seeing specifically in the city of Cincinnati. Now, I do want to highlight one other very important thing before I turn it over to Dr. Amin, and that is that our safety protocols in our school buildings and in athletics have been outstanding, to the point that we had one incident of spread within a school, and that's not Cincinnati Public saying it, it's the health department saying it, and one example of spread within a sports team for all 65 buildings and all the teams that we have going. So our schools are safe. The reason that we decided to move back to distance learning is because many of our staff members were either in quarantine or in isolation because they were sick themselves. We have agreed to and are working to collect the data on the confirmed cases since we're in distance learning, and we have that information. And so I wanted to just provide that context for the board tonight. Since we have gone into distance learning, we have had 61 staff members test positive. Now, again, remember, these are not people, they're not in our buildings. So this didn't happen within our schools. And then we have approximately 14 students who have tested positive since we've gone to distance learning. Now, all this information is really dependent upon people reporting it to us. And so we have to take this at face value that they're giving us the correct information. It's likely that there are more cases, but that's the number that have been reported to us since we've been in distance learning. Cincinnati Public Schools is a lot like many other organizations that are having a hard time being able to staff their facilities based upon people being sick. Just this morning, I was on a phone call with some healthcare professionals in the area, and they are experiencing a shortage of nurses to be able to serve sick people, so much so that they are contemplating sending people who are very ill to Dayton, and also seeing if we can have other healthcare professionals come to Cincinnati. So this is a very serious matter, and it's one that we bring before the board every month, actually at every meeting, to be able to report out to inform, but also to motivate people to action. So with that context, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amin. She is the epidemiologist for the Cincinnati Health Department. Thank you.
Evening, and thank you, board members and Superintendent Mitchell, for having me on behalf of the Cincinnati Health Department. And tonight we will go over some of the data metrics that we have been routinely observing. Next slide, please. So this slide is looking at Hamilton County school districts. This is as of December 3rd, last week. This data is coming from the Ohio Department of Health, and it's a week behind. So this is reported as of last week. This figure represents the cumulative cases as well as the new cases for each week. So the bars, the blue and green bars, are reflecting the number of student and staff cumulative cases since the beginning of October. And then the few lines, and then the bars are reflecting of the new cases per week. And so you can see as of, they've continued to increase as we've progressed through this pandemic. Next slide, please. So this is our epidemiological curve that's looking at the daily number of cases each week or each day, followed by the 7-day moving average in the gray dots, and then the cumulative cases with the dark blue line. So as you can see, around November 5th is when we hit our first 200 mark, and we have continued to stay around that number the last few weeks. Our total number as of today is 13,378 cases. Next slide, please. So this is our 14-day numbers, or 14-day figure, and then it's also showing this 7-day moving average reflected by the green and red dots. So we've talked about this figure before, where we wanted to see all figures or all dots reflected as green. But I think one thing to highlight here is because we've stabilized at such a high number, right now our 14-day average number is at 187 cases per day. So a green dot isn't as meaningful as, as if we were starting to see a steady decline between the cases. So because we are at such a high number, I think we do want to see those green dots, but this is more reflective of just a steady increase in cases above the 150 mark. Next slide, please. And looking at our positivity, on the right-hand side, you'll see the city of Cincinnati by itself, which is at 10.8%. And on the left side is Hamilton County, just outside of the city, at 16%. Also not shown here are for Hamilton County overall, including both Cincinnati and the county together, the positivity rate is at 13.2%. The bottom figures are representing the testing per 100,000. So you'll see that we are continuing to increase testing. So the positivity rates are above that threshold mark, which is at 5%, where we would like to be below 5%. Next slide. And the last metric that we look at is the time from testing to result for this is reflective of our positive cases. So it is taking approximately a median of 2 days to return test results. This is for the duration cumulatively, as well as we looked at the last 14 days, what that median mark is, and that is 2 days as well. And I believe that's the end of our data update.
Thank you, Dr. Amin. So that is our update for this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amin. Do board members have questions or comments about the update? Okay. Ms. Bolton? Unmute, please. Unmute.
Thank you. I don't know if a good doctor can answer this or if anybody else can, but it's interesting that the city versus the county or outside the city has the two different measurements or results. Is there any reasoning or thinking as to why an urban center would have the lower than the county or the outside the urban center? It just seems, I won't say unusual, but has anybody thought about that or thinking about that?
Well, we don't know exactly why the county is reflective of such higher numbers. Their population is about 200,000 greater than the city, but overall their numbers are higher. I mean, I think we do know that the spread is everywhere in the community. So I think that is probably the main take-home message. But we're not exactly certain of the reasoning behind it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. I think first, Dr. Amin, thank you so much for being here and for being able to answer questions with us. Just speaking for me personally, it's incredibly helpful, and I want to say thank you. I was encouraged to see, I think last week, it looked like, and I want to make sure I wasn't misreading it, but some new guidance from the CDC that was a little bit more pushing districts to think about reopening, particularly for younger kids. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about, as we think about, January and February, and it seems like the science on this is so evolving. Has your perspective evolved at all on what we should be looking for in order to bring some sets of kids back safely?
In terms of the guidance that you mentioned related to schools, I'm not as familiar with, so I'd have to just review that just to double check. Honestly, I think that CPS is doing a really tremendous job in terms of the protocols that have been put in place, and I think the time period where the students were in school learning, and the lack of transmission within the school has been reflective of that. And I think while the schools are at distance learning, the teams are still working, very closely with the data and trying to determine where there are key points of improvement. I don't know that I can speak to anything offhand, but I know that that's something that the teams between Children's, the Health Department, and CPS are looking at.
But from your perspective, if we were to imagine ourselves being here in January, trying to figure out what the right next move is, or you recommend the same criteria we'd been using in the fall, or any modifications to that going into the spring?
No, I would make the same recommendation as what is currently happening, and I think that the testing and the ability to screen the students and do that testing on hand has also been a tremendous help.
Cool. Thank you.
Additional questions? Ms. Bolton?
Just another one, just from your medical understanding of these facts, and they talk about the surge, we're just feeling the one on Thanksgiving now. Considering Hanukkah, considering Christmas, considering the winter break, when does that surge or post-holiday surge, how many days does it take to hit the surge, and then how long does it take to kind of get through the surge and be in some other place? I mean, is there a certain number of days that we've been able to witness?
Well, so of the data that we talked about today, we have seen cases that have had reporting a symptom onset as of December 2nd. So I would say that this data is reflective of the cases that have potentially happened over the Thanksgiving holiday and the travel period. And so I would say it's probably about 7 days before you would start to see the reflection of that holiday break. And then it, could continue on, potentially for another week or two. And I think with the Christmas holiday or the December holidays, and people potentially traveling at different times throughout December, it'll be, I think the numbers may continue, to stay at this higher level or continue to increase during that period.
Thank you.
But the hope is that people will try to limit that travel.
Thank you. Mr. Messer?
Yes, just to add my thanks as well. And a quick question. One of the factors, well, let me go further. I know many of our teachers want to be back in the classrooms. I know many of our parents want their kids back in the classroom. So there's going to be, have to be a well-orchestrated plan to make that happen. And one of the factors I know that's in the mix there for making that determination is, or at least one of the variables, the access to the vaccine or a vaccine. And with 3 at least in the front runners, one I know probably is 60 to 90 days out. There are 2, they're probably before that. What do you think the real world likelihood from a timing standpoint that provided we can make sure our teachers are considered essential persons, when can we expect that widespread availability, at least to those frontline workers, based on what you know on the vaccines?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a challenging question because we know that the first round will be coming soon in the next few weeks, but how it will be distributed. Right now, the CD has put the 1A, 1B, and 1C, and 1A is our long-term care, congregate care, and high-risk congregate care living, and then healthcare workers and essential workers. How fast that will be distributed and and being able to actually implement the vaccine, I'm not sure that I can speak to that yet. I don't know that I can give you a good answer for that one.
Okay.
I would say definitely not before January or February.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions or comments? Okay. Mr. Lindy.
Just the last thing I promise. I don't know if this is for Dr. Amin or for the superintendent, but as we get into January and are just in the act of trying to interpret new data and make decisions together, will we have the chance to get Dr. Amin's fantastic perspective again?
Sure, happy to do so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Dr. Amin, for providing this update for us. Always helpful, and it's good news for us to hear that CPS is doing so well, and we knew that, and we continue to plan for our kids to come back, our kids and our staff. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And Carolyn, if I could add one last thing, I just want to congratulate the superintendent for connecting us with these thought leaders. And experts, subject matter experts that she's able to bring in because she's got them advising her in the background, and she's bringing that information to us. I just want to say kudos to you for identifying these partners. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Okay. That's the last presentation. Okay, so we're going to move on to hearing the public. We are now at the item on our agenda for hearing the public. The board prides itself on being as transparent and open as possible. Consistent with the state's direction to minimize public gatherings, we are convening this video conference call to include opportunity for public comment. Here again are the specific instructions for participation and hearing of the public. Members of the public who wish to speak during the board meeting must make requests through the chat feature, including your full name, affiliation to the district, school community, and contact information for response to your questions. This request models standard practice if we were meeting in person in the Ed Center. Mr. Hoying will assist us, and we will have a timekeeper. Once the request has been granted, you will be invited to enter. Please click on the camera icon to go interactive. And I'm going to repeat that. We would like for you to click on your camera icons to be visible to the board. Thank you. After speaking, you will briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak and may only speak once. When the timer goes off, your 2 minutes are up, and I will remind you that your 2 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. We ask that your public commentary be respectful of all those listening in. Okay, Mr. Hoying, are we ready? How many people?
Yes, ma'am. We have about 6 or 7 speakers tonight. Our first speaker is Kendra Phelps. Go ahead, Ms. Phelps.
I'm sorry, it's saying my video is disabled. Is it okay for me to proceed?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Board President Jones and board members, I would like to speak with you this evening about the fact that Governor DeWine signed into law the opportunity for local school districts to waive the evaluation process this year. I want to ask that you please support our teachers and principals by waiving the formal evaluation process for this year, as was signed into law. I want to point out the misconception that those that are not in the school building may have, that principals and teachers do not collaborate and share feedback except for in evaluation settings. As a matter of fact, some of the most genuine and impactful collaborations are outside of the evaluation process. Finally, our teachers have had no district training on the new components of the evaluation system, and principals have had minimal training. Give us the opportunity to address this need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Owen DeRico, followed by Yusuf Munir. Go ahead, Mr. DeRico.
All right, am I properly visible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Owen DeRico. I am a sophomore at Walnut Hills High School, and I would like to speak with you as myself and many other interested students have over the past several weeks and months about the presence of SROs and police within Cincinnati Public Schools. And I would like to specifically address the idea that cultivating a better relationship with these officers is an effective means of curbing their negative influence within our schools. The data shows that even with police having better relationship building programs, and even with them filling these more direct community roles in other school districts where this has been examined, this has not in any way addressed the disproportionate amount of use of punishment by these officers against students of color as opposed to white students. The job of police is to criminalize and arrest people. Attempting to make the police into something which they are not is something which has both been proved not to work and a waste of resources, considering the fact that these resources could just as well be placed into hiring mental health professionals, psychologists, and social workers, and supporting these workers better in order to fill this role more effectively. And I would urge you to consider this in going forward, considering your policies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Yusuf Munir, followed by Ruth DeBono. Go ahead, Mr. Munir.
Can you all see and hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Yusuf Munir. I am a senior at Walnut Hills High School, and I've been a CPS student for, will be my 6th year. More than that, though, I am a member of the community who has been attempting for the past few months, along with several of my other students who will also be speaking on this call, to advocate for the complete removal of SROs from CPS public schools, the implementation of restorative and transformative justice within our schools, and adding additional funding for counselors, psychologists, and mental health professionals and social workers, and making them more of a part of the discipline process. But today I want to focus not on that, but I want to focus on one of the most common counter arguments proposed by CPS when we advocate for especially restorative and transformative justice. And the most common response we get is that, oh, we're already doing that. Don't you know we have PBIS, the Positive Behavioral Intervention and Support System. But the issue is that this system is not working. You can't just put restorative in front of punitive practices and then pretend like the problem is solved. You have to actually work to implement restorative and transformative justice that seeks not to add additional harm and punish, but to repair the harm caused in our school communities. You can't just offer people in-school suspensions and say that this is a restorative practice. And even more than this, it's been ineffective. The PBIS bill was passed in Ohio in 2015. As of the most recent data published by the Civil Rights Data Collection, that's the 2017-2018 school year, Black and brown students were still disproportionately punished. There was no sign of that changing. Black and brown students were still disproportionately suspended, given in-school suspensions, expulsions, and referred to the police. This is not a system that is restorative, a punitive system that you labeled restorative. We don't want any more buzzwords. We actually want restorative and transformative justice. We don't want virtue signaling. We want justice.
Thank you, Mr. Munir.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ruth DeBono, followed by Garcia. Go ahead, Ms. DeBono.
Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm also here with the Young Activist Coalition, and asking you to remove SROs from our school, implement restorative and transformative justice. In CPS schools, Black students make up 63% of the total student population, but make up 85% of all police referrals. And according to the ACLU, schools with police have 3.5 times as many arrests as schools without police. And these are statistics that are already, I think, scary to anyone. But as a Black student in CPS schools, these are especially scary statistics to me. And is a large part of why it is so important to me that police officers are removed from schools. It's scary going into schools and knowing that these statistics could represent myself or my brothers or my cousins or other people who look like me. And I'm asking you to listen to us and please remove police officers from schools and implement restorative justice so that students are not being criminalized by our system but are able to learn and grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adam Garcia. Go ahead, Mr. Garcia.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can you see me?
Mr. Garcia, we can hear you.
Am I? Okay. Okay. I too am here to support what my fellow students have said. I'm a senior at Walnut Hills High School, and I think for a while, a lot of us have noticed that there's not really a point to have, there's not really much of a positive effect to outweigh the negative effect of having police in our schools. I haven't heard from anyone who's had, they've had problems with gone to the SRO and anything's been done about it. And I would agree with the proposed measures for increased mental health support and increased punitive justice within our schools.
Thank you. Our last speaker tonight is CFT President Julie Sellers. Go ahead, Ms. Sellers.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I am here this evening, and my main focus tonight will be on the OTES waiver. House Bill 404 passed the House and Senate last week and was signed by the governor. This bill gives the board the ability to waive the OTES system for this school year. And the reasons that we feel that this is important and why the law was passed is because the state was very late with developing the modules of training necessary for the OTES system. Just last year, when we were supposed to have training during the pilot, that training was completed by the state until February or early March, and then we went into remote learning statewide, which meant that the modules that they had to be all converted to a virtual learning format. Those have now just been completed. So teachers still need training on the new system. The district has not provided any training to the teachers as of now. That is not anything to do with the district or negligence on the part of the district. That is because those materials and modules were not available from the state. So this really needs to be our focus moving forward, is making sure that every teacher has a training on the placemats, because those placemats are really very different from the previous OTES 1.0. Secondly, administrators have not all been able to pass their credentialing yet. They need time to be trained to make sure that we have inter-rater reliability within the district. And again, this is no fault of the districts. It's because the state was late getting those training modules out. This year, we're very late getting the evaluation process started. At the beginning of the school year, we did not have the modules and the training for administrators or teachers to begin the process. So that process is kind of just starting. I don't think that principals will have the time necessary to complete 4 evaluation touch points for every teacher within their buildings. With teachers working remotely in quarantines, these obstacles will cause many incompletes within the system, which means that those evaluations are totally meaningless. We do need to focus on the teacher development of the evaluation system. This is a real change from the placemat, which is basically just the standards and the rubrics from 1.0 to 2.0. And that is really where we need to place our focus. And as always, if principals are having any concerns, they can provide as many supports as necessary for teachers who are in question of needing additional support. That is something that principals have always had the ability to do. And I think that we should be able to continue with that process this year. But really, until we have a system that has true inter-rater reliability, then I think that at this point, if we do not go with the waiver, we're just putting ourselves to having a lot of unstable and unstable and unreliable evaluations across the district. And that is really the true reason why the state implemented this. This was one of their first waivers of implementation due to the quarantines and the closures. So I hope that I was hoping you could vote on it this evening, because so many teachers and principals are waiting to determine what is going to happen. And so I don't know if that's a possibility for you to vote for this waiver this evening, but I hope it is. If you need help with writing a resolution, I would, or Kendra would be more than happy to help you with that. I have multiple documentations of information around this. So thank you, and I hope that you can make a decision this evening from the floor to put this waiver up for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Jones?
Yes, Superintendent.
If I could, yeah. So I, in no way, shape, or form do I disagree with anything that board member or CFT President Sellers has said. I do just want to have one clarifying piece of information, and that is all of our principals have been credentialed with the exception of one who is on medical leave. And so I did just fact check that a couple of moments ago. And so I didn't want the impression to be that our principals are just not going through the credentialing process. But again, I am not disagreeing with anything that President Sellers has said. I just want everyone to know that all of our principals are credentialed with the exception of one who is on leave. And that was as of Friday.
Thank you, Superintendent, for the clarification. Okay, I believe that concludes our hearing of the public. So we'll move on. Does anyone have any kudos? Okay, so Ms. Wagner and her department gets all the kudos unspoken tonight. So there you go. Okay, Ms. Bates, no retirements?
Only one.
Oh, we have one. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
We have one retirement from our civil service personnel, and that's Pamela Ivy, a student service assistant, is retiring. So we thank Miss Ivy for her service to our children and wish her well in her retirement.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. We have no board matters items tonight, so we'll move on to our resolutions. Vice President Messer, please present the following resolution on behalf of the full board.
Thank you, President Jones. On behalf of the board, I present a resolution urging the state to consider teachers and other school personnel as essential persons who should be prioritized in the distribution of vaccinations for COVID-19. I present the resolution as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Bolton?
Yes, and I appreciate that initially teachers may have been part of a list of essential, but there are also many, many, many essential employees and workers in that larger group. And I think that even in recent days, except locally, at least statewide, I've not necessarily been reassured that indeed teachers and other education folks have had the listing in a higher priority than possible, if the highest possible that we could do as essential workers. Without that, we will not be able to get the schools open until we are able to deal with the adults that work directly with our kids. So I support this wholeheartedly and think we need to continue to advocate. And I know some other districts are going to be doing that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Aye.
Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. Messer.
Yes.
Mr. Morosky.
Yes.
President Jones.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Bolton, please present the next resolution for consideration.
Thank you. Cincinnati Public Schools Resolution Fiscal Year 2020 to 2021 Amended Appropriation Resolution. I submit and hope for adoption.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Great. Thank you. Superintendent, do you have a report?
I do. I just have some positive information to inform the board of regarding some work that's taking place in our schools. So next slide, please. So we're very excited that our elementary jazz orchestra will be performing on January the 8th, and we're going to live stream this performance. And I have double checked with Dr. Rudnick, who has every precautionary measure in place. I said to him, how are they possibly going to play these instruments and not wear a mask? And he has found a very specific mask that allows the students to be able to blow through like a hole to be able to play their instruments. So I'm saying all of this to say that our staff, they are going at great lengths to be able to provide wonderful programming for our young people. So this will be a really great way for us to kick off the new year. Again, it's going to be a live performance. However, the performance will not have an audience. We will live stream this. This is part of an educational global network conference that Cincinnati Public Schools has been invited to. I also just want to bring back to your recollection that Dr. Rudnick started this work only a couple of years back. And even in that short period of time, he has received national and international recognition for this work. And so we're excited that our kids will be able to participate in the 2021 Jazz Educational Network Global Conference on January the 8th. So more information to come. It is at 1 p.m. and we will live stream it. Next slide, please. As you can imagine, for many of our families, this pandemic has caused a significant hardship. And for many families, before the pandemic took place, there was a hardship. Our office, working with Project Connect in terms of our homeless families and students, they are diligently working literally around the clock to make sure that they can help fill in the gaps and the holes that our parents and our kids may be experiencing. So on this coming Saturday, December the 12th, from noon until 4, Project Connect will be hosting a toy drive at Woodward High School. Staff members will be standing outside and they will have bins to be able to collect brand new toys for kids of any age. And so I just really encourage any and everyone to please join all of us. I know that I'm going to go shopping and buy some toys. It makes me excited to be able to buy some toys for little kids and drop them off on Saturday. But we really want to help make this year, in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the social unrest, a good time for kids. This should be a fun time for our young people. And so I just encourage people to go and drop off toys on Saturday, December the 12th, from noon until 4 at Woodward High School. And thank you so very much for Rebecca Beach and her entire staff. They pull together and they take really good care of our families along with our partners. So please buy some toys and take them over to Woodward on Saturday. Next slide, please. Aiken High School is no stranger to innovation, and the principal there she's been doing a creative professional development for a while now with her staff, and the objective of the professional development is to get the staff members into the College Hill community to learn about the rich heritage and history and all of the wonderful assets that are right there in the backyard of Aiken High School. And so this is something that the principal has done for a while now, and that's hosting a scavenger hunt, a community scavenger hunt. And this allows, again, the staff members to get out into the community, to understand what's in the community, and to also understand how we can invite the community into our school and make sure that our school is going out and serving the community. So Principal's VOTAC goal is to get the staff into the community to learn about the history, the landmarks, and the culture. And I know there are at least 2 board members who are excited about our families seeing our staff out into the College Hill community. Next slide, please. So Artworks. We are so excited to be able to congratulate Cindy Lucky. She is a librarian at the Academy of World Languages, and she has been recognized as a community hero by Artworks Cincinnati. So the school resource coordinator for the school nominated the librarian from AWL to receive this recognition, stating that Cindy has gone over and beyond during this pandemic. She has gone to homes, she has delivered computers, and just to bring back to everyone's recollection, that school, AWL, they service over 32 different zip codes. And so she has gone out into the community, out into those zip codes, delivering devices, standing on the porch, helping families with the Wi-Fi, setting up their technology so that they don't miss a beat with instruction for their school. So she's been right there on the doorsteps troubleshooting with our families and our kids. And so we just want to acknowledge her and say congratulations, and acknowledge the fact that Artworks is celebrating one of our local heroes from our very own AWL school, Cindy Lucky. And that concludes my verbal report in addition to the written recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the recommendations of the superintendent?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please. I'm sorry, any discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there, do we have any discussion? Ms. Bolton?
Yes, I think it would be helpful for the public and for the board, and certainly for me, if we had an explanation regarding the transportation items, I think, that are listed on pages 5 and 6. I think there's 4 different providers, and I think it would be helpful to just review that if the administration has someone present to do so.
I believe Mr. Johnson is online, but he needs to be brought in as a presenter.
Great, thank you.
Lauren, can you raise your hand so we can bring in? I think he's there.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Johnson.
How's everybody doing? All right. There we go.
There you are. Okay.
Got it. All right. Board member, President Jones, board members, to provide some clarification for you with the items on the treasury report. Those 4 vendors are our yellow bus contractors. If you guys recall, back at the beginning of this fiscal year, we only did a provisional budget to just get us started for the school year. So we only allocated enough funds to get us through the first couple of months of the school year. Because we did have a delay in the school year, we were able to stretch that out to the month of October with those funds. This is not new money. This is money that has already been allocated to budget line item 088. So This is just the allocation of those funds to those specific PO numbers. So again, it's not new money. I provided a brief debriefing earlier. I'm not sure if you guys were able to get that yet, but it did give you guys a high-level synopsis of the current expenses that we've had thus far with each of those 4 vendors against the current original PO values that we had. Give you an example. First student, right now our expenses from August to October has been roughly $1.9 million. And our original PO value was set up as $2 million. So we only have, $100,000 left in there to really provide for the rest of the services that we've authorized them to provide for us thus far. Same thing with Peterman. They have a smaller contract with us. So we originally only set them up for $250,000. To date, we have expensed out roughly $130,000 of that, leaving us with a remainder of only roughly $120,000 for the remainder of the school year. Same thing with Queen City. Queen City Transportation, we originally set up that PO value for $2 million. We have spent thus far roughly $660,000 with that. So we do have a remainder of 1.3, but that's not enough to budget us for the rest of the year for all our expenses. And then the last yellow bus vendor here you'll see is UTS, which they were originally budgeted and funded $2.1 million. Thus far, we've spent roughly $1.8 million with them. And so we only have a remaining balance of $350,000 roughly. So again, this is not new funds. We're not requesting new funds. This is just for us to allocate the funds that we have already been budgeted and approved and allocate that to those POs for those values. Just a side note, we did also, over the course of the last 3 months, we have constantly been working with the Treasurer Wagner on doing reductions of our budget based upon the district's increased costs of COVID-related expenses, as well as our overall reduction in our service days that we have this year. So thus far, we have did a reduction of $800,000 in September. We did another $3.9 million reduction in October, and then we did another $1.3 million reduction in November. Again, we're constantly revising and looking at our budget to make sure our expenses are in line with the services that we are having our vendors provide. Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, this is very helpful. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad for the email or the chart that you've sent us to clarify that. The larger numbers then on each of these items are really about how much was budgeted for the full year, and we only had budgeted for like the first quarter. We've only allocated only for the first quarter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the 10 million or 12 million or the 5.9 or whatever was what we had thought of for the whole year before we, of course, have made these adjustments for COVID.
Correct. Well, the adjustments for COVID thus far has been taken out in that 3.9 mil, the 1.3 mil, and this is as is if we are planning for January going forth. And so, of course, if we do decide to make some changes, which we've already have, there will be some additional savings there that will be representative there, if that makes sense.
Yes, and we'll know a little bit more about that as we proceed, for sure. So my last question then is, I didn't want the public to think that we are spending more for transportation under these circumstances than we are. I think that would be kind of alarming to the public. But my other question then is, and I think you said this at finance, and I think I've reported it to the board. We are in our last years of the contracts with these particular vendors, correct?
That's correct.
And the monies that we are spending in part are for usage, but also we are spending a certain amount of money to hold certain resources and personnel in reserve, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and maybe we'll learn more about the kind of monies being held in to provide for the reserve. If we go in person, we'll learn more about that in Finance Committee, but I think this has been helpful and I appreciate it. I look forward to reading that email.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. No problem.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Aye.
Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. Messer.
Yes.
Mr. Morosky.
Yes.
President Jones.
Yes. Thank you. Any inquiries and updates? All righty. No inquiries and updates. Assignments. Are there any assignments? I just want to make sure, and I guess this is a follow-up assignment to Daniel Hoying, to make sure that we have a letter attached to the resolution that we approved tonight for Governor DeWine. And Mr. Hoying, would you please make sure that gets out for us?
I've already forwarded it for your signature, Board President Jones. Thank you.
You forwarded? Okay, great.
To the board office, yes.
Okay, gotcha. It'll be done. Gotcha. Ms. Bolton?
Yes, to General Counsel, it'd be good to have a description regarding that issue regarding OTES and the allowance granted districts. What does that all entail? What kind of discretion do we have? A short memo, hopefully. You've been having to do a lot of writing recently, so that would be very helpful for me to know what level of discretion we have. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Any other assignments to Bates?
Yes, and I just want to formalize the assignment I made earlier to have a release on the award that our treasurer was given earlier this evening.
Okay. Got it. Anything else? All righty. Well, having no other business before us, I declare the meeting adjourned. It is 7:39, record time. All right. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.